Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to talk about This Is Us, Season 5, Episode 16, titled The Adirondacks, the season finale for Season 5. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't yet watched the episode, please go and do so, and then come back and watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video and want to support the channel, please hit me up with a like, share, comment, and please subscribe to my channel. It took me a couple of watches to determine if I liked this episode or not, and the conclusion I came to is that I did indeed like it. It's a little predictable in how it played out, somewhat, but not in a bad way, in that it's just a logical progression of the story. At least as far as Madison and Kevin are concerned. I'm going to do this video like I've done the last couple, and not do a scene-by-scene breakdown. I'm going to do it character by character instead. The videos seem to have flowed better since I've done that in the last couple. Let's start with Toby and Kate, which did not play out at all how I expected it to. When we first see them, they're getting ready to leave for the Adirondacks for Kevin's wedding. Toby brings up the job opportunity, which he hasn't officially gotten yet. My criticisms of Toby last week was the idea that he was just going to spring this on her, and that's not quite how it plays out, but it sort of does at the same time. When he initially brings it up, Kate is excited. But there's one little hitch. It would require Toby to be in San Francisco 3 days out of the week when the office is opened back up. Toby finally gets around to telling Kate that he needs to work. Emotionally and mentally, he needs to work. He loves his kids, but, and this seems to upset Kate a little bit, but she handles it rather quietly. And I would mostly say maturely. Kate, from the beginning of the season on, has shown a lot of growth this season. I only can remember one instance in which I was actually critical of her at all, and it was her handling of Ellie back in the ride. She ends up telling Toby that he just dropped a couple of bombshells on her, and she needs time to digest the news. Later, in a conversation with Madison, she suddenly remembers her wedding vows and makes a decision. She calls up Philip and tells him that she has to resign. Philip decides to go on a bit of a rant on how he didn't want to hire Kate in the first place. That she was not the top applicant. And Kate goes on to say that she knows, but Philip says he is not finished. Although she wasn't exactly his first choice. Her talent and the fact that the kids love her and that she's helping them makes it so that he can't let her resign. Therefore, he's going to hang up the phone. Well, that's cute and all, but this is not a slave economy, so if Kate wants to quit, she can quit, and there's nothing you can do about it. This leads to a scene where Toby has decided not to take the offer after all. Okay, guys. What should have happened here is you two should have gotten together and had a conversation about how this works and what you guys decide to do. Not Kate makes a separate decision and decides to quit her job, and Toby decides not to take the job without talking to each other. But I guess it's all good because Kate tells him that he should take the job, and she also is not going to quit her job. Kate ends up telling him that she loves him, and that she would rather spend 4 days with him than 8 days with anybody else. Her math is a little fuzzy on that, but whatever. And it seems like these two crazy kids are going to make it work after all. Except not so much. In the flash forward, we see that Kate is getting married once again. And it's to Philip, her boss, her current boss. This is 5 years in the future, so who knows if they're still working together or not. But based on the evidence, Toby and Kate do not survive. I can't say that I'm all that surprised. They've always looked kind of doomed to me as a couple. With the exception of this season, in which I thought they did a reasonable job of seeming like a functioning, non-dysfunctional couple. But nevertheless, based on this episode, Toby and Kate are going to be Splitsville. And I can't say I'm looking forward to watching that play out in the final season. We have to cover them breaking up, and I guess Philip and her getting together. And here's the thing. Based on his 2 appearances, I don't actually like Philip. So the creators have quite a bit of work to do to make me like him. Nevertheless, that is a bit of a shocking twist, not something I saw coming. So bravo to that. A lot of people, the fans, are trying to say that Philip is actually Madison's brother, the long-lost brother, I guess, and that his reference to being Kevin's brother-in-law, future brother-in-law, is because he was actually getting married to Madison, and Kate's comments meant something else. She specifically says that this is the last time that she's doing this, meaning getting married. Yeah, the people who are going down that rabbit hole are really stretching things here. From all evidence, Kate is getting married again, and getting married to Philip. All in all, their storyline played out okay. It was rather weirdly, matter-of-factly played. I did criticize Toby a little bit on his timing. Like, why is he choosing now to bring up the job offer? He could wait another day on that. Another day that isn't Kevin's wedding day, where he could potentially upset Kevin's sister, his wife. This could very well have been a big argument, a big blow-up on the eve of Kevin's wedding. Which brings us to Randall. Randall has a very slight part in this, mostly being there in support of Kevin. It was kind of amusing to watch him run around with an umbrella over Kevin's head so that Kevin would not become sunburned. His story is mostly played out with Rebecca, who has picked now to ask about Randall's trip to New Orleans to find out about his birth mother. Now again, I have to wonder about the timing. Was this conversation really needed now, or could it wait another day? Narratively speaking, Rebecca should have a scene with Kevin. This is his day, after all. They should have scenes together. And they do at the end. We'll talk about that later. But not during. When Randall initially starts to talk to Rebecca about his trip to New Orleans, Rebecca starts crying. And he immediately switches tracks to talking about Annie's bowling skills, which is the most story that Annie has gotten in the entire series. Kevin ends up interrupting that conversation with some best man duties, and that's basically to repair the chapel or whatever that broke, that Madison designed herself. Kevin wants him to gather the troops so that they can fix the situation. A little while later, Kevin is talking to Randall about the aborted conversation. Randall basically says she started crying by the second picture and that it isn't worth it because he's misinterpreting what exactly she's crying about. He thinks, or at least this is where Rebecca ends up saying, that she's crying out of jealousy, but that's not the case at all, as she later says. when they have one of their final scenes together. It's because she knew about William. She held back on that. She robbed him of knowing William. Not necessarily Laurel, because there was no way for Randall to end up knowing Laurel. He could have gotten a chance to know William much younger, but not Laurel, as we saw play out in Birth Mother. And she wants to apologize for that. She wants to say the words, "I'm sorry." She doesn't want to let Randall keep letting her off the hook, as he's done many, many times, dating back to the first season. I don't think they ever actually had a conversation about what she did. He just quietly put it aside, like everything else. He's been able to hold Kate accountable for some of the things in their childhood, as well as Kevin, as we saw recently. But never his mother. She goes on to say that she's also sorry for not providing Randall with a forum to think about his parents, to talk about his issues. Eventually, Randall cries, and Rebecca cries, and he tells her the story about his mother, about who she was. It was a beautiful scene, no doubt. I just don't know that this needed to take place here. It's Kevin's wedding day, and you're over here telling Randall that he's your favorite person. Yeah, that tracks with the rest of the series. It's not quite as bad as the Toby Kate thing, but still, it's a little weird. This is the finale, so I guess we need to give these two characters something meaningful to play during the finale, in what is essentially Kevin's story. And then we have Beth, whose story is mainly tied up in Tess, who is having some issue, which is obvious from the get-go. And it turns out she doesn't like her bridesmaid dress, because it isn't her. I've been sympathetic to Tess all season long. I don't necessarily relate to her issues. I don't necessarily always understand them. But I've had empathy for it. I'm not one of the fans that just straight up call her a brat. Most of her behavior this season has been normal teenage behavior. But here I'm not quite so sympathetic. For one, by now she's seen her bridesmaid dress. This is not the first time. She had to be fitted for it, she had to buy it, or she's seen it by now. She's had all this time to raise an objection, and didn't. And the fact of the matter is, the bridesmaids' dresses are chosen by the brides. And these are notoriously hated by the bridesmaids, because they aren't necessarily the bridesmaid style. That's just the way it goes. This day is about Kevin and Madison. This is not a day about Tess. And as her mother, in this instance, I don't know. I think it would be more beneficial to say, hey, look, it's just a couple hours. Wear the dress. Make Madison and Kevin happy. And let that be the end of that. And then, in the future, you can wear whatever is your pleasure. This is the one time that I am not sympathetic to Tess's concerns. And I don't really think that they should have been indulged. Now, okay, I see what they're doing here. They're trying to put a little cap on the season storyline with the two of them and basically repair that relationship. I don't really think that was totally necessary. I don't think that this is a story that needed to be capped here. But I do get the intention of these scenes. I will say that Zombie Miguel, who instead of wanting brains, wanting hugs at the beginning of this thread with Tess, is pretty adorable, not gonna lie. I just don't quite get why you don't love this man. Which finally brings us to Madison and Kevin, and how their story played out. When we first see Kevin, he's practicing his Princess Bride impersonation, which is going to be part of his speech in the mirror. But take a look at Kevin's hair in this scene at the beginning. You'll note right away that it's a little bit different from what he sports for the rest of the episode. He's wearing a tux in this scene, which is not necessarily what he's doing when we first see him. That can simply be dismissed as being later in the episode, but it very much is not. We see a flashback to when Madison's mom is abandoning her. She tells her, that she cannot stay with this man any longer. Okay, I understand that. Fine, you can't stay married to her father. Any reason that you have to walk out on Madison too and never be seen again? It's funny because the brief scenes that we see of Madison's parents are enough to make us completely despise them. Madison ends up leaving earrings, or rather her mother ends up leaving earrings for Madison, saying that hopefully she can wear them when she meets a man that is worthy of her, unlike what she did. Right away, with these early scenes with Madison, I got the sense of exactly where this was going. I had that fear already, but I just knew. I knew how this story was going to end up playing out. In a later flashback scene with Madison's dad, he literally tells her to just get any old prom date. Doesn't matter if it's someone special. Just get somebody to go with you. Don't worry about having magic or sparks in life. Just settle for what you can get, is the basic message that he leaves her with. And it is an absolute terrible message. Later we see in another flashback when she's breaking up with her boyfriend David, he tells her that he doesn't feel the way she does. But despite basically telling her that he doesn't love her, she still wants to fight for it. Throughout the episode, we see something is eating at her. And eventually, she can't take it anymore. She goes and sees Kevin. And she basically asks a very basic question. Are you in love with me? Kevin can't answer the question. He can't say it. He says, we're about to become a family. And Madison points out that they use that language a lot. They're in love with the family. Nothing is more important than the four of them. But the problem is, Madison is in love with Kevin. And he can't say it. She goes on to say, as Kevin listens empathetically, because he doesn't quite know what's going on yet. Her mom left her, and left her some earrings to give a man that was worthy. She left her, with a dad that told her that there would be no magic in the world, to not expect sparks from life. She has gone through her life accepting the meager little scraps of affection that she could get. And it is only now, because of Kevin himself, that she finally realizes that she deserves more. She can't get married to a man that doesn't love her. Kevin tries to object. He tries to say not to do this, not to call off the wedding, that he wants to be a family, that things can grow. He is saying everything in the world except for 3 little words. He is not saying, I love you. because he doesn't love her. He cares about her. There's no doubt about that. I don't have a doubt in my mind that he thinks she's amazing. He loves his kids. He really cares about her, and he genuinely wants to be a family. He fell in love with the idea of their little family. But he is not in love with Madison. He continues to argue how love can grow after they get married. And Madison continues to say no. Kevin, I feel you, man. Really, I do. I hear where you're coming from. But you are hopelessly misguided. This is not how things work. You don't marry someone and then fall in love with them. It does not work that way. Your entire relationship has been backwards. But this is absolutely not going to work. Madison is right. You are wrong, as much as that sucks. I was critical in the early parts of the season of how this was progressing, how I thought that them getting engaged in the premiere was moving too fast, and that this did not spell a long-term healthy relationship. But a funny thing happened along the way. The creators had me falling in love with the idea of their little family, just like them. And it seemed that despite all odds, early on, they were doing the right things to make this work. Not for the first time this season, I say to Madison, good for you. I've always liked Madison as a character, but now I'm in love with her as a character. I want what's best for her, and she's right. This isn't it. She deserves someone who actually is going to love her. Now, I'm not really clear on the status of the relationship from this point on. Are they going to stay together and maybe move at a slower pace? Or are they just straight up breaking up? We have one final scene where the people gather around Kevin. He's first with his mother. And he says he couldn't lie to Madison. He just couldn't do it. Kate and Randall soon join him, and they ask how Kevin is doing. They ask how Jack would have handled the situation. And Rebecca is having trouble adding Jack to their family situations. She's not sure if it's because of her disease or something else, but she's having trouble adding him back in. Randall says that Jack wouldn't have left Kevin by himself. And his sister, Kate, asks, or rather says, that Jack would be worried that he would take a drink. And Kevin assures her that he won't. Kevin worries about how Madison is doing. And Madison is worried about how he's doing. Kate points out that he should stay busy, that he's at his best when he's busy. And I've always likened Kevin to a shark. He has to constantly keep moving. A little less recently, but that's why Kevin seems to be jumping from place to place, not settling down. Why acting is actually an appealing career for him, because it forces him to jump around. And maybe why TV work wasn't what was best for him, because it forced him to stay stationary. Why 1 minute he's moving in with Randall, and the next buying a trailer to live near Nikki. You'll notice him doing that throughout the series if you really take a look at the direction that Kevin's character takes. He's been more settled this season. He seemed ready to settle down. But ultimately, what he was settling down for was a fantasy. At least at the rate that he decided to take things. Maybe if Kevin slows it down, maybe one day Madison and Kevin can work out. But not now. Rebecca gives Kevin a project. She wants him to build the house. The house that Jack wanted to build for her near the cabin. The house that we, in fact, see that Kevin has built in the future timeline. The one where Rebecca will eventually succumb either to her disease or old age, or both. She wants to spend as much time as she can with the family, and she felt a different kind of peace at the cabin. And so that is the project that she hands off to Kevin, and he obviously takes it on. We cut ahead to 5 years in the future, though we don't quite know that. We only know that eventually through dialogue, when Kevin says he's a 45-year-old man. He's once again doing his Princess Bride impersonation, only it wasn't for his own wedding that he was doing this. It was for Kate's wedding. He goes down the hallway and tries to enter her room, and Beth and Madison try to kick him out. Madison makes a reference to she told him 12 times that morning that he was not allowed in the room. That seems to be an indication that Madison and Kevin are at the very least on good terms. But it might also indicate that they are still together. They might even be married at this point. We don't see either of their ring fingers. They do seem really flirty in this scene, but it could be nothing more than being really good at being friends and co-parents. We'll have to wait till next season, the final season, to really see how this plays out. We saw an article about Randall being a rising star. We don't know what that's about. Perhaps he's gone and run for Congress. Maybe even president. Who knows? The piece of paper that Kevin was reading from had Big 3 Homes on it, which was the company that Jack tried to start, or was thinking about starting, a long time ago, before he put his dreams on hold. Perhaps Kevin has given up acting and started this business instead. Or maybe he's doing both. We don't really know at this point. Nicky has made a reference to his wife. Who's he married to? Perhaps Sally? Maybe he successfully found her. And of course the big shocker. It looks like Kate is in fact marrying Philip. So Toby, this is official confirmation that Toby and Kate are Splitsville. That they aren't going to make it. Which I kind of already gathered. But I also thought that perhaps Kate would die. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe they are simply divorced, and Kate is alive and well in the future timeline. Something I will mention, because I didn't before concluding this video. This episode pretty much proves Nicky right. Nicky, in the prior episode, compared Kevin to Jerry Maguire, basically saying that he was in love with the idea of kids, while not so much the person that he's marrying. That turned out to be true. The very thing that he said that got Kevin all pissed off was the truth. It wasn't just the doubts that made him react that way. It's because some part of him knew that Nicky was right. And that usually ends up making one person angry. So the Jerry 2.0 metaphor was exactly right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this episode and Season 5, which all in all, I thought was a pretty great season. It certainly had its flaws. There are certainly points where it reached. Birth Mother, at times, I kind of feel like it was a reach. But a beautifully done reach. This is the first season that I've covered all the way through. And I can't wait till Season 6 which will prove to be the final season of this series. Hopefully they stick the landing. They have a lot of story that they have to get through. I'm willing to bet that there are some aspects of the Pearson story that will never be fully told. But we'll have to wait till next season to see how this all plays out. As far as my future plans are concerned, or my more immediate plans, during the summer, and I guess the series isn't coming back till January, I plan on doing rewatch videos of the old episodes of this series, as well as the Quantum Leap rewatches. I'll probably alternate weeks, which means by the time this series comes back, I should be at least a little bit into the second season of this series. So just because This Is Us is going on a rather lengthy break, don't expect me to. You still have my content to look forward to. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my 2 Facebook groups, the Corman Productions one, as well as the This Is Us discussion page. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle, as well as buying me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.